Welcome to Spicer & Company. I'm Sean Spicer.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. After risking their own health by traveling to New York to treat COVID-19 patients, healthcare workers are getting an unwelcome surprise: taxes on the income they earned.
That's right. It's amazing. If they received any sort of stipend, they're subject to New York state taxes. Don't you think this should be waived? Former Governor of New York, George Pataki, is going to join us in a little while, and we're going to get his thoughts on this idea of taxing these frontline responders. And later, ABC said that they were going to ask the tough questions to presidential contender Joe Biden. But were those questions really tough? We're going to have a full breakdown coming up. But first, California Congressman Devin Nunes is on deck to talk about Michael Flynn, the discredited allegations of Russian collusion in the 2016 election, and what should be done about FBI Director Christopher Wray. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that President Trump's acting chief of national intelligence, Rick Grenell, has declassified names of Obama officials who unmasked former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. And those names could come at any time. The decision by Grenell comes days after Attorney General Bill Barr decided to drop a criminal case against Flynn. Here to talk about this and more is California Congressman and the House Intelligence Committee's ranking member, Devin Nunes. Congressman, welcome.
Great to be with you, Sean.
So, Congressman, for the longest time, this concept and narrative has been going around that Michael Flynn was, quote unquote, unmasked, meaning that his name was revealed because it was incidentally picked up in some of these intelligence gathering motives. There's a narrative out there now, according to some of the documents that have been released, that Flynn was the target the entire time.
Well, what I would say is, if you remember back to the only crime that was committed was the leak of General Flynn's conversation with the Russian ambassador that was picked up by our intelligence services. That was the only crime. And to this day, it's still the only crime. There was never any collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. Now there's additional crimes that I think we have to look at, and that is, who plotted and schemed to lead this investigation into the Trump campaign. That's an investigation that Durham is looking into. You also have the questions now that are raised about General Flynn and the prosecution that was done by Mueller's team and the Mueller witch hunt, and whether or not Mueller himself and his team should be investigated, followed by whether or not who at the DOJ and the FBI at the highest levels who was overseeing Mueller, were they involved in any of this cover-up? Because, we are going to make criminal referrals based on the Mueller team and whoever at DOJ and FBI were hiding or misleading this information from Congress when we were running our investigation.
This morning, former Vice President Biden was on ABC. He was asked about this, and he kind of fumbled around the answer when asked what he knew and when he knew it. How concerned should we be about what he knew?
Well, we know for sure that the FBI was briefed on this, or FBI briefed the Obama administration in August of 2016. We had a very tough time at pinning down what they knew and when they knew it. But now more is coming to light. Now we know that there was a meeting that occurred on January 5th of 2017, just weeks before President Trump was sworn into office. It looks like that was the time period in which they plotted and schemed to do this investigation of General Flynn, which, by the way, the day before that meeting on January 4th, the FBI agents in charge had said, look, there's nothing here. They were trying to wash their hands of it and get out of there because they shouldn't have ever been investigating a three-star general for a counterintelligence investigation to begin with. It was totally asinine from the start. So, we'll just see where it goes from here, Sean.
Speaking of where it goes from here, there's a lot of rumors out there that there's another bombshell that's about to be dropped this week regarding all of the stuff that we're talking about. Do you have any idea what people think is going to happen, or do you have any insight into actually what will happen and what will be about?
Well, look, there's been plenty of bombshells over the last month or so. And I would say that there's still bombshells that people can find if they go through and read the transcripts. So, over 50 transcripts were released. When you begin to compare the transcripts that we did, the interviews that we did, the House Republicans, to other public statements that have been said, other interviews that were said, you can start to put the pieces together of the people that were involved in this conspiracy to first spy on their political opponents, to spy on the Trump campaign. What was probably originally planned as an October surprise to make up this nonsense about Russia, but then led to, essentially an attempted coup on the president of the United States. There's a lot of bombshells that are out there. I think what everybody's really waiting for is, will the U.S. Attorney out of Connecticut be able to bring indictments to these on these people that committed these crimes? And I sure hope that it happens.
McFarland about this last week, but all of this led up to the 2016 election. In other words, the investigation of Flynn, the subsequent interviews and investigation once Trump won. Knowing that we're headed into another election cycle, are you concerned that the quote unquote bad apples that were in the FBI at that time are still there? And do you have confidence in Christopher Wray, or should he be removed?
Well, that's why I said earlier, we're really doing a deep dive now into the Mueller team. We're going through evaluating each one of those decisions, comparing when things were leaked to the media, and we will be making a criminal referral on that. And I mentioned this earlier as it relates to that interaction between the Mueller team and what they got away with by essentially putting out their own dossier. Because if you read that Mueller report, it reads like the Christopher Steele dossier. I mean, they wasted $40 million and never did a damn thing. Now, remember, we were running an investigation at that time, the House Republicans on the Intelligence Committee. We were asking for documents to be produced, witnesses to be produced. Things were redacted, kept classified from the American people. I don't know. It was always easy to blame the Mueller team on that. However, if it was somebody else at the higher levels of the Department of Justice or the FBI that was essentially hiding that stuff or omitting it from Congress, not providing it to Congress, we will be making a criminal referral based on that. And I just don't want to speculate as to where that goes.
Can you, in the
minority, there's only a few places higher than the Mueller team.
Even though you're in the minority, can you still make that criminal referral?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Any member of Congress can make a criminal referral at any time. Okay.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting, too, is that because Rick Grenell, the acting director of national intelligence, has released or granted, allowed for these documents to come out, there's a huge inconsistency in what a lot of the people from the Obama administration said publicly about what they had said and seen and what they told the House committee. Do you think that's odd? It's really interesting how they sort of said there's nothing here when asked about it publicly, when privately they had a much different view.
Right. And if we had a real media in this country that weren't just 90% of them are controlled by the Democrats, If we actually had a real media, these guys would be absolutely destroyed. If the people that were in the media that are working for the Democrats, if they actually turned their effort and actually went back to their roots and became real investigative journalists, goes to what I was saying earlier. It is limitless to the number of interviews and investigations that could occur here. You mentioned Biden earlier. You can go back to nearly all 50 of those people who were interviewed, and there's story after story, day by day by day, that you would unravel who's lying and why they lied. Right. Because when they got down into our committee, and the pressure was on where you had to tell the truth or you could be prosecuted facing a criminal referral, they got pretty quiet then. They had no evidence of anybody conspiring or colluding with the Russians.
That's right. Well, Congressman, thank you for joining us once again. I appreciate all your efforts to get to the bottom of this to make sure it doesn't happen again. Continue to stay safe.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Well, Sean, we followed this story of the last week or so, and it continues to grow and grow. Do you think that the FBI or the DOJ are going to admit misconduct at this point? Or are they just going to wait to be tried further?
I don't think the FBI is ever going to admit this. And I think right now the process has gotten so politicized. I don't see this happening aside from, and I think that's why ODNI Grenell has continued to release these documents, because he just basically, seems to me anyway, is saying, go look for yourself. You be the judge at what they said publicly and what they actually said when they were under oath in front of the House of Representatives. So I think more and more we're just going to see public documents be put out there, declassified, so that people can make up their own mind.
Very interesting.
All right. Well, up next, you're not going to believe this. New York is planning to tax healthcare workers who traveled from out of state to come to New York and help out. And later, President Trump walked out of yesterday's press briefing. Was the president out of line, or was the media trying to fabricate a story? And speaking of the media, ABC promised to ask hardball questions to the presumptive Democratic nominee, Joe Biden. Did they deliver on that promise? We're going to let you be the judge, and we have that and a whole lot more when we come back.